Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live stream here on the Stack Blitz Bolt airwaves. This could be your third live stream with us this week. Expo kindly hosted us on their airwaves, and then we had office hours yesterday, and now we're here talking about Expo on our airwaves. So for those of you who have joined us this week, welcome back. And for those of you just joining, also welcome. We're going to be talking about the Expo integration, building mobile apps. I'm super excited for this one. As someone, I attended a code boot camp to learn how to build mobile apps. This was in 2017, and it was a 6-month boot camp, and I still don't fully understand it. So I'll be taking notes diligently and super excited. With us is Keith Kurek. Hi, Keith.
Hi.
Keith from the Expo team.
I've been doing mobile development for like 10 years and I still don't really fully understand it. So it's okay.
Okay. That makes me feel better. That makes me feel a lot better. And then Tomek, welcome back.
Hi, everyone.
Awesome. Okay, so I think, Tomek, if you want to take over the reins, I'm going to pop off stage here.
Yeah, so how did we end up in here with Keith? And so it seems like it was like when I thought about it recently, I thought like, oh, like 2 months ago, or was it a month ago? It was actually 2 weeks ago when we announced the tight integration between Bolt and Expo. And that really blew up, right? And
yeah, it feels like a longer because not because it's been like a long time, but just because I feel like I've grown so attached to it. It's this coding friend that's always been with me, but it's only been 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's great. Even with the really fast pacing of the AI news and the development on its own, and we've seen a lot of people already using and posting it, and maybe that kind of influenced that. Oh yeah, I've seen like probably several dozens of Bolt Expo projects at this point. So yeah, but to everyone who is joining us to learn what happened and what it is, what it means to you, let's just maybe start from the beginning. So Keith, what is Expo?
Yeah, what is Expo? I mean, sometimes the question is like, what is Expo not? And when it comes to React Native apps, it kind of does a little bit of everything. But to summarize it, it is and the first official React Native framework. And in terms of it, there's a definition of like what is a React Native framework, and like we have all those things. Not that there couldn't be another one, but what that means is, so you kind of have to start with like what is React Native, and React Native is a way to code cross-platform Android, iOS, and web apps in JavaScript and have them use like the real native views on each platform. So on Android and iOS, it's not a web view; it's actual native components, the same things that you would be using if you were building the app in Xcode and Android Studio. So in terms of what React Native is just a core framework that allows that rendering of those native components based on JavaScript. And Expo provides a bunch of open source tools as well as some services to help you get to the App Store a lot easier. So we have like the Expo SDK, which is a bunch of libraries that do all the other things you need just beside rendering things on the screen, like access to your camera, location APIs, all sorts of things like that. We have the Expo CLI, which is just kind of a very convenient interface to run these things locally, build them. And then, of course, the EAS CLI, Expo Application Services, which allows you to access EAS Build, which lets you build in the cloud. So you don't even need a Mac to build an iOS app, for instance. You can send it to our cloud just with a simple command, as well as EAS Update, which is a way to update the JavaScript in your app that's already live without actually updating the rest of the code. Since JavaScript is, interpreted and we can send it over the air like we do with websites. So that kind of actually boils down to like what is like Expo in essence, or what it's always been, even as it's gotten, from where it started to where it is now, has always been like trying to reduce those barriers to entry for mobile development. Mobile development has historically been more challenging than web. Like web, you take a website. It used to be we just wrote HTML and then we put it on a server somewhere, and then we had a web page. And now we compile JavaScript, but we still just put it on a server, and it's a web page. We like move files around, and we have deployed apps. And the app stores, of course, are not that simple. You have to build it with specific tools. You have to deploy it to the Play Store, the App Store, and they have their own rules about what's allowed to go on there and what kind of checks it has to pass. And as well as just needing all this extra tooling to get started. So Expo has been kind of about like reducing those barriers to entry. So you could like really get the true north is you could get an app going just with a Node environment, just like you could with a website.
So actually, like, because I also worked in web for quite a long time, and I think even some of our users, when they are building apps, they already know that, oh, you can build like a responsive web app that you can maybe even add to your homepage, but that's still like web app. So it still renders HTML and stuff like that. And I think there's also something that sometimes being used in native apps that you actually download from App Store that is called WebView, right? And it also
Yes.
renders that HTML, CSS, and stuff like that. So is that similar to Expo, or is Expo different in that way?
Yeah,
Like,
Expo is distinct from that. Yeah. So the the first iteration of cross-platform mobile apps, write once and run both on Android and iOS, was to take a web app and encapsulate it in a web view, which is just a control that is inside of both native platforms that can render a web page or can render local HTML and JavaScript. React Native, and you actually could get pretty far with that. I mean, because websites look good, but there was always kind of the question of like, does it have native look and feel? Does it feel like an app that you actually wrote with Xcode or Android Studio? And the answer was often no, it isn't quite there. So yeah, the way React Native works, React Native takes advantage, and Expo by extension, takes advantage of kind of that decoupling that was kind of always built in the React, where it could, the first rendering engine was React DOM. Well, you could plug in a different one, and this is React Native. So it's working with JSX, the same kind of syntax, but instead of putting divs and spans and CSS files and things like that, we have these common components that are proxies for the native view on Android, iOS, and web. Like it's just called, for instance, a view or text in React Native, and that transpiles down to whatever the equivalent native component is on that platform. So when you do a view in React Native, you're actually using a UI view in iOS. When you're using like a flat list or any number of the different scrollable things in React Native, you're actually using like a recycler view in Android, or a UI, what's the thing? UI table view controller. That's what it was in iOS. So you're using the real thing, so you can achieve like pretty much perfect parity with an app that was written in the tools that Apple and Google produce. And that parity has gotten even closer because with our new architecture, the interplay between JavaScript and the native code is fully synchronous. So you make a change in JavaScript, and that's piping right over on the same, a synchronous call to an equivalent native piece of code. So the performance is perceptibly like, React Native apps can be absolutely performant, even though you are taking this one language and translating it over to something else happening on the native side.
Oh, wow. Okay, so just to maybe make this very tangible, visually clear. So if you, I remember when I think iOS switched from like 5 to 6 or something, like back then there was like a very big change in the native UI feel.
Yeah, I remember that.
There
Yeah,
was like this. Yeah, everything was glassy back then, I think. Then
it went from
became, like, flat,
skeuomorphism. That was our first flat UI.
Oh, yeah.
That was when we like lost skeuomorphism for the first time.
Yeah, so I guess like the difference is also when you code that that app in WebView or in like as a mobile app, as a like responsive app, using HTML and CSS, you can make it look almost exactly as the native one. But if the mobile OS updates, it will look like an old
Yeah.
OS, right? And if you're rendering a button with Expo with React Native, you get the current OS's version of that button, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like as the OS, because if we're using the actual text input that's used on iOS and Android, say like, I mean, this is an older feature now. It was a little bit after iOS 6, but like when Android and iOS started adding like password manager support, well, that there was a little bit of tweaking in terms of like you had to pass the right properties to say that your field is password manager enabled. But once you were there, that support basically came for free with the text input that was in your React Native app, because that text, the code in the operating system that makes that text input appear on the screen that is what's being referenced. You're not drawing a facsimile of that on web, or you're not rebuilding it from scratch in some like UI language or something like that. It's the real deal.
Oh, and the second thing is the performance. You like mentioned when you were name calling this specific native APIs, I guess, for the UI for Android and iOS. There was like something about like recycler and things like that, right? And when you have like a list views, and I guess.
Oh yeah, so that I was referring to like a specific like implementation of a list view on Android, and I was just saying like the cross-platform lists in React Native use the actual lists that are built into the native code that are optimized, for instance, like to take views that are not in your visible area. It kind of takes them off of the whatever it's drawing and reuses them later. So these things already had, when you wrote native code, they had performance optimizations to account for the fact that like if you try to render a bunch of stuff off screen, especially when mobile devices back then were not very powerful at all, your app would slow to a crawl. So because React Native can plug into those things, we can get all the same performance advantages and optimizations that Apple and Google were building in there for native app developers.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember actually making that specific demo. I don't remember how many, but like maybe 2 or 2,000. I just like rendered 2,000 things with HTML, and it loaded. It kind of worked, but like when I do it with React Native, it's just like it could be as well as like 12 items or 2,000 items and like performance, right? So it's crazy. Like you can see that like, all that basically optimization that Android and iOS engineers put into OS is now being used by your app. So that's great.
Yeah.
So
that reminded me of another little performance bit. I gotta do this. It was I don't want to delay too long, but it reminded me back when I was writing apps in Cordova. That was my first mobile app I wrote, was in Cordova. So doing basically the WebView thing. And JavaScript is single threaded in your browser. And I was trying to do this like smooth menu transition, but it was also loading data at the same time. And on Android, it always had like a little hitch where like I could, no matter what I did, I could not make this menu smooth, this drawer menu smooth, scroll smoothly out. And one fundamental difference is, while JavaScript is still single threaded on React Native, it's calling to native threads, and the native side is multi-threaded. So when you see an animation in React Native, what's very often happening is it's sending like the whole animation over to the native side, and that's now running on a different thread. And that's why you don't have like those little hitches as if you were trying to like update state all the time in your React code and trying to do too many things on one thread.
Wow. Okay. So I think we went very deep into
Sorry there.
like the history, and yeah, but like if you've been there, like that's painful. So it's hard to like overstate how better it is now with tools like React Native. But let's actually, can we see how this works? Do you have some demo maybe for us?
Oh, yes. All right, let's share here. So yeah, I guess the question is where to start. I actually I almost entirely coded an Expo app last night with Bolt. I say almost because I had the prompts before, and I kind of got myself into a corner where I didn't like where I was going in my first iteration. So I literally scrapped all my code at 11 p.m. last night and put my prompt back in and got the app out, and to the point where all I have to do is hit the button to deploy it on the Play Store and App Store, and it'll go to review and deploy. So that illustrates how powerful this combination is. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, of course, when and I'm sure folks are already quite familiar with Bolt being on the Stack List live stream here. But yeah, if you have, this new this build a mobile app with Expo button, it'll start with this prompt. So that's going to tell it right there, of course, to build
Keith. Oops, sorry. Looks like we have for some reason, looks like some folks are seeing just a black screen. Oh, okay. I think people can see it now. Chat, how are we seeing?
Okay, cool. How are we doing? Now, okay.
All right, now it's okay. Okay, cool. All right.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Kate. You appeared, and now it works.
Phew, that was the key.
I scared it.
Yeah, so I mean, like you can do stuff like what was the prompt I was trying the other day? Build a mobile app that tracks my daily water consumption, and shows me a calendar or a graph, bar graph with how much water I've drunk. And I won't stick on this app for long because I don't know what'll come out, but it will. But it's so impressive that I think it's a good intro to like what is going on when it creates this app and what the basic project layout is. Now, a couple notable things to see here is that we are looking at what to any web developer would look like a pretty standard web project in a lot of ways. You've got a package JSON. You've got this is a configuration file. You got ts config JSON. So now we know we're dealing with TypeScript. In this case, and in pretty much any case where you're generating an Expo app with Bolt, you're going to be using Expo Router, which is our file-based routing solution. In terms of the syntax you use, it's pretty similar to file-based routing in Next.js. So you can see here we have like an entry point. We have an index screen. Apparently gave us a stat screen. It looks like it's doing a tab bar. So we can actually probably see this in a moment here. So let me go grab the CLI here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Did it run it's still creating it. That's why I didn't see it yet. In a moment, it will show us a QR code that will let us scan it into the Expo Go app. So this is the app I have on my, actually I need to open, I'm in Expo Go. The Expo Go app is a sandbox that you can install from the App Store, and it doesn't let you run every Expo app, but it has enough native code inside of it that you can prototype a lot of apps inside of Expo Go. The reason it can't do every app is because there's code that is interpreted. When you're talking about a React Native app, there's code that's interpreted, JavaScript, and there's code that's compiled, which is all the native Swift or Kotlin or C++ or whatever inside your app, and that code cannot change. Apple and Google will not let you change that code. I think someone tried like 10 years ago on Apple, and Apple shut them down. So there's certain capabilities you would eventually need to build your own app in order to do. But in terms of prototyping UIs, accessing a lot of foundational native tools like the camera, location, and other APIs like that, you can actually do it in Expo Go. So you can actually prototype your app, get started just by downloading an app on the App Store, using Bolt to generate something to get you started, and not having to subscribe to an Apple developer account or a Play Store console, or you don't have to download Xcode or Android Studio. I mean, of course, I'm showing you here, I'm programming in my browser right now, but I actually do a lot of my free time development on Windows where you can't compile an iOS app. And I have a perfectly good time using tools like Expo Go and development builds and some of the other things that let you test your code without having to build native stuff or deal with these big, heavy IDEs. So in here, we should have our QR code now. Now, since I'm showing you on a simulator, I'm not going to scan a QR code, but you could download the Expo Go app, scan the QR code, and be using your app on your phone. I'm going to copy this URL and enter it in manually on the Expo Go app. And I haven't seen what this app looks like yet, so we'll see what it looks like. Last time I gave it much more of a better prompt when I made this app. Looks like we've got a little bit of error. I don't know if that error is a big deal or not. We can also see what it looks like, of course, in the web. Oh, I don't have a word charge.
We do have something.
Well, that's actually okay, because I will show you my app that I did build that I made a better prompt for you last night. I just wanted to show it starting off, kick it off there. But let me show you my app I had actually worked a little bit harder on, which is over here. So this is an app I already have going. I am going to restart to get the QR code. And a fun little thing about Expo Go, I'm using a keyboard shortcut because this is a simulator, but you actually, to get back to the main menu in Expo Go, you shake the device. Dismiss that. Sometimes in the simulator, you got to just start over a little bit. But yeah, you can actually get back to that menu by shaking the device. So I always used to tell people I had issues with accidentally like throwing my phone across the room when I was furiously testing something, trying to refresh it over and over.
Yeah, I already scanned it from your screen and it's running on my phone.
Oh, cool. So yeah, okay, this is my app. I gave it a better prompt. I put a little bit of work into this one last night. I think I probably only at the end of the day actually did like 10 or 12 prompts before I was pretty happy with it in Bolt. But yeah, we can see here. That's because it has the old URL in there. So let me copy the right URL here. Here we go. Copy. Paste. Here we go. Yeah, so this is my... Oop. I don't know what it did there. Did I type something in? I might have typed something in. Uh-oh. JSON parse. Oh, I wonder if I typed something in app.json. Did I do that? Let me check it here real quick. Let's see if Bolt can fix it. It was working on your phone though. It didn't show this error, right?
Yeah. Yep. It's still working.
Oh, interesting.
I just tried adding new thing. So I just noticed that there's more to the app.
I feel like I'm wondering if I typed something in like by accident. Because that like JSON parse error, like so that gives me like probably a good opportunity to show like some of the other things in here. Actually, let me do one thing in here. Let me so the secret about Expo apps, besides being native apps, Android and iOS, is a great many of them can work on the web as well. So you can hit the preview like you probably would in a lot of other Bolt apps. And I think it might actually already have it up here. Well, I'll connect the window here. And here it's working on web. That's good. Now, I only made this app to be a small screen. I actually told it specifically in my prompt that I only wanted to be a small screen. But this, I think it's a kind of fun thing is like, even if you don't, even if you like, I often keep a lot of my apps that I'm working on web compatible, because it's just sometimes really easy to go prototype a UI in web as well. Like sometimes I'm coding at night after the kids are in bed, and I left my phone upstairs to charge because I was trying to do a little bit of digital detox, but apparently not that much because I actually want to code something. So all I have is my laptop. So I just open it up in a browser, and then I'm coding. I think it's working now. Okay, yeah, I think it's working now. Whatever happened, it fixed it. I think I just typed something dumb in there. But yeah, so this is my app. This is a native app. It's running. It's using native code. It's using this Expo Go sandbox. I could and I have compiled it into an actual standalone native app, as we call it. My little project here, I called it Introvert Chat. It's an app for talking to yourself. So it's like kind of, actually what's funny about this is I had this idea like 10 years ago, and I worked on it for one day and I got bored. And then I did it like 5 years ago and I worked on it one day and I got bored. And then like Bolt comes along and I'm like, all right, I'm doing it. And I just like do, a couple prompts and I got the app. But the whole idea was like, you could ask your questions like, what book should I read? And then you could answer yourself like, Fahrenheit 451 or something like that. And then kind of keep this like, actually part of the inspiration was like, what if instead of trying to craft the perfect tweet, I just said them to myself and then I checked that they're good. I like slept on them for a while and then I went and tweeted them.
Yeah, so kind of like as a developers, we have this concept of like rubber duck. So it seems like kind of this, right? Yeah, that's cool.
And it's pretty exciting too. Like, this is like a modest innovation, but one of these things I think this kind of speaks to some of like the things when you're trying to figure out what to do with an app. Like, of course, you start with Bolt, you're going to give it a prompt that's probably focused on like functionality. Like, I want it to do this thing. And then you might get a little more focus and be like, I want it to have these screens. But then like, one thing I was getting into was like, I wanted it to tell it like, I wanted to edit these things in a specific way. So I was looking for inspiration from other apps. And I noticed, like I was looking for, okay, how do I, in a list, what's a good way to add an edit functionality? And of course, there's some of these things where you have these fancy swipey things or whatever. But I just went into the Messages app on my Android phone and I held down on a message thread, and this little like menu popped up here, this little top bar with all these icons that would then, I could delete the message, I could share it or something like that. So that was kind of my third level of prompts, was like, here's this thing I saw in another app. I'm going to describe it to you, Bolt. Please make it for me. And it did quite well. You can create new personas here. And these little personas, guys, were like, these are the different facets of myself. Like sometimes there's home improvement me. Maybe there's like musical me who wants to write down like what guitar tabs I should learn because I heard it on the heard it on the radio and I'm like, I should learn that later. Here we go. Oh, there's a guitar. Perfect. So then I could create new ones of these and be like, I should learn while my guitar gently weeps. Oh, now that song's stuck in my head. That's a good song. Anyway,
where is it stored actually? How is that data stored? Do you have this?
Oh, this is just local storage. So that's another good, like, so of course you have like the connect to Supabase button. So you can go right away on a full stack app, and Expo is perfectly compatible with like the Supabase JavaScript libraries. That's actually another hidden advantage of Expo React Native apps is, as long as it's not referencing like the DOM or HTML, a lot of JavaScript libraries are perfectly compatible. So a lot of like utility libraries, a lot of SDKs for data platforms, stuff like that. But yeah, in this case, I specifically said, I just want to do local storage. So there's a React Native async storage API in here that is very similar in terms of like how you'd use it to HTML local storage. And actually when you compile to web, it's actually using HTML local storage, while on native, it's going to be using like some kind of file-based storage. So yeah, I feel like this is a nice way to start and keep things simple and allow me to focus on the UI.
Okay, so actually, I think we get like a lot of questions about like, okay, what next? What's next now? Like now that I have this app that like looks great on this simulator, like how do I get it out there? How do we publish it? Or
Yeah. So so you're going to want to get it to right, and we hope that deploy is even more integrated in the future. Right now, it's going to take you to the instructions on how to interact with Expo Application Services (EAS), which is going to provide you with EAS build. The minimum viable way to get at the App Store is it's going to give you EAS build, which lets you send this code to the cloud, to our cloud, to build the native binaries, and then we have EAS submit, which helps you submit those to the App Store and Play Store. So I can take you through some of that here. So to use these, you would want to download, most likely, you would want to download this, which this will, download basically as a project file. I already unzipped it and put it out here and put it into Visual Studio Code. And actually, let me pull that back into the main window here, so you guys can hopefully see my Visual Studio Code. Okay.
So I add zoom in a little bit because
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
So in here, so this, and probably one of the first things I went into here is looking at my app.json. So this app.json file is, it's kind of a proxy for the native configuration. There's bits that go into that build that are outside of your JavaScript, like the app icon, the splash screen, things like that. One critical one was supports tablet. I turned this to false because I just wasn't mentally ready to go to the iPad, because it's great to deploy to iPad right away, but then you have to make sure your interface actually looks good on iPad. So I'm going to put that aside. I wanted to fill this out so I was ready to build. So actually, one of the things I needed to do that wasn't already there, for instance, is I wanted to add my own icons and splash screen. And we actually, in our docs, if you look this up, we have a helpful doc. If you look up splash screen, and it takes you to a template. Here we go. So it actually also a video tutorial on how to create icons and splash screens for all the platforms. And it opens up this Figma template, and I made my little icon. I just used some icons. I used one of the plugins on Figma. Actually, honestly, the hardest part of deploying the app is because I'm bad at graphics. I had to remember how to use Figma. Everything else felt very natural to me. So I was able to plug this into the template and get a bunch of files out. And that's where all of these came from. So now I have these things that if I were to build this, it would, look like a fairly complete app. So at that point I was running EAS init. Well, first off, I was installing the EAS CLI, which is a global npm install -g EAS CLI, which is a global npm package, which gives you access to the services side of it. And actually, wait, I should back up a little bit. And when we're talking about commands here, is you can also run this, of course, if I'm editing this locally on my computer at the end of the day. I do want to be able to run it on my end, and that is npx expo start. And that will give you the exact same thing you saw on Bolt. That QR code, I can scan that and go into Expo Go. Nice. But yeah, if I want to build it, of course, I'm going to run, when I run this EAS init command, and it's going to tell me my project is already initialized, which is great. It's going to create a project on the Expo website, and it's going to set up, once I do that, and then I also run EAS build configure, it's going to set up this eas.json. And this gives me build profiles. So these are different ways I could build my app. And for instance, I could build kind of a preview, if I wanted to sideload this on my Android phone as an APK file for quick testing. I could build the preview build. We won't go too far into it, but there's a thing called a development build where if you need to add additional native capabilities that weren't built into Expo Go, you can build an app that works like Expo Go where you can scan a QR code and run it, but it has extra native code. So that's a good, I don't want to say escape catch, but transition point to building more complex apps than your initial prototype. But what I really wanted to go for was production, which is what takes you to the stores. So to do that, I ran EAS build, profile, production, platform, all. Give it a moment here. So a few critical things it's doing. If you are even if you're not familiar with multiple development, one of the things you can get tripped up on is the apps have to be signed. Android has to have this upload key store file, like this cryptography thing. Hey, sorry, just a second here. I have this meeting reserved till 3. Does it? Oh, shit. Okay. Hang on a second here. I don't know what happened here.
Well, if anyone wants to prove that we're live, we're so live. In the meantime, I can answer one or two like Bolt related questions that we have. I see one about Bolt optimization, like the Bolt browser support. Let me do this while Keith. Bolt. Basically, Chrome and Edge are more or less the same. They use the same engine, so it's the engine that we're most optimized for. Firefox should work just as well. The most the technically challenging browser is Safari, but I would go in that literally in that order. Chrome and Edge first. Firefox is also good to go, and probably would skip Safari for development. Honestly. Okay, Keith, are you back? You're muted. Yes, true. Very relatable.
I did make the mistake. I'm in the wrong conference room. I did book a conference, but I booked the wrong one. I went into the wrong one. So anyway, yeah, where am I back here?
You're back.
So what I was talking about was when you have to build an app, you have to have these credentials, and on the Android side, you have to have this key store. On the Apple side, you have to have a distribution cert and a provisioning profile. And I don't want to go too much in the weeds on what these things are, but they are EAS can make them for you. So if you have an Apple developer account, so you do, once you get to this point, you're going to have to subscribe to the Apple developer account, and that is like a $99 a year thing, as well as Google Play Store, which is a $25 one-time charge. And when you have those things set up, like for instance, it's asking me to log into my Apple account here. And when I log into my Apple account, it's going to generate the distribution cert if I don't have it, and the provisioning profile. So I don't have to think about these things, especially if it's my first time doing it. If you're plugging into like existing app, an existing team or whatever, you'll probably want to share some of these things. But if I'm a new app developer, I can just do this and be done with it. So that's some of the folks who are like, I could do all the other things in app development. They still really appreciate this because credentials management is a pain in the rear.
So EAS is something that comes from Expo, right? It's not something that is, or what is this thing? Where does it come from, and what does it do for you?
Yeah, EAS is Expo Application Services. So it's the cloud services aspect. If you see something with the Expo command, that's the Expo open source tools, and you can use the open source tools without ever using the paid services. But the EAS command is for interfacing specifically with the cloud services. And at a certain level, those are paid services, but the free tier will give you up to 30 builds a month, including 15 Android and up to 1,000 updaters. So you can actually take an app to the store as your first app on the free account with no problem.
And so basically it does like a lot of that manual job out of your hands, so you don't have to like do the
so let me show what it looks like on the website here. If I go into my project, so this is what I created when I did the EAS init, and now it's running these builds. So what's actually doing is it's spinning up a Mac computer inside of a data center, and it's running the build on that. And you can actually see, as it goes, you can actually see the commands in there.
Oh, right, because normally like that's the common pain point of every like app developer, that you actually need to have a Mac to
Right, yes.
develop stuff for iOS, and now with this you don't, right? Am I?
Right, yeah, exactly. I can
Because
kick off a build with
wow.
the EAS command. I can
Okay,
kick off a build from a Windows computer or Linux and run an iOS build. Those tools are not
that's
available
awesome.
for those platforms, but I can still use them. For a lot of initial apps, you can get really far without a Mac with this. There's certain levels of complexity when you get into like deep native integrations where you probably would still want a Mac for debugging native code, like especially if you're writing your own native code and plugging it into an Expo app, which is perfectly possible. But if I'm using the standard toolbox, I find I can work just fine on my Windows computer.
Awesome.
So yeah, once those are built, those were already built. At least I built them previously. But there also is an EAS submit command, and this can be used to auto upload your app to the App Store or the Play Store. And this is, you can actually run it as part of the EAS build command as well. So once you do the initial setup the first time, you can be like EAS build, put in all your properties, and be like auto submit. And so what this will do is, after your build is complete, if it's successful, it will submit it to TestFlight, which is Apple's test service, and which is like the final resting ground before your app is ready to go into a store listing. And actually what that looks like is over here. I have my app store loaded up here. You'll see my app here is ready to review. So EAS Submit actually created this entry in App Store Connect for me. And it uploaded my build right here, right after I finished building it. And then I could actually put it into a store listing and say, okay, here's my build I want to use. And then I started filling in my store listing. And actually, I'm really ready to the point that if I want to, oh wait, I actually accidentally added it for review already. Oh wait, no, there is a submit button. I am completely ready to submit this app, other than I just haven't hit this button yet. That's not to say it doesn't have bugs. I might get rejected because it has some bugs. The one thing I didn't have a lot of time for between 11 p.m. Last night and right now is testing. Testing is a critical ingredient to app development, of course. But I can, basically, once you're to this point, it's about filling in and checking these boxes for the store. So I took screenshots. You need to take a screenshot that matches the size of the largest iPhone size. Now, if you don't have that size, you can use a simulator, which is what I did, or there's certain tools that will help you make a screenshot that matches the pixels. Like, you don't have to have it be a perfect screenshot. A lot of folks do like a little frame around it and put a smaller app window inside of it. And then you have to fill in a description, of course. Some of the folks ask for keywords and things like that. One little fun thing that I did, I got to the point where I was doing this and I realized, oh man, I have all my screenshots, I have my icons, I have my splash screens. They require a privacy policy. Even though my app is like local data only, it still required a privacy policy, which is just a bunch of boilerplate. Number one, there's like a lot of things that can generate that boilerplate for you. So a long time ago, I did that for a previous app. And then I was like, well, I just don't have time to deploy that. So I went back to Bolt and I said, here's a copy of my old privacy policy. I want you to make me a new privacy policy that substitutes the name of the old app or the new app for the old app, and make it a page inside of my existing app. Now, this page doesn't link to anything inside my app itself, but remember, it's a web app as well. And Expo also supports deploying web apps now. So I went EAS deploy, or actually I built it first. I did npx expo export -- platform web. And then I went EAS deploy -prod. And this got me a production website that was my app, technically, But it loads my app. I didn't really test it on web. I didn't make it look good on web. But most importantly, I could feed Apple this link. I already have my privacy policy up there, and I didn't have to like go stick that on my web page or something like that. I'll just take a nap. You can
That's
even do fun
awesome.
things like, I did this on an old app. I wonder where I put this URL. Oh, I think it's on my other browser here. Here, let's see if we can find this here. It is. Oh, here it is. Okay, copy, paste. On an old app I did, I was like, oh, I want a page that shows my app, or advertises my app because it wants you to put a website in there. And I realized, oh, I could just add a little bit of web code that surrounds the app when it's on the web platform. And then you could just, like, my app was so simple, I could just have people interact with a demo of my app inside the website. So that was like another fun thing I could do. And this was before EAS deploy existed, so I had to go figure out the scripts to deploy it on GitHub pages. But now I could just run EAS deploy and have that up there in a moment.
Wow, but so that's basically, we're already on the Apple property, basically, with that submitting aspect. You said what you said. Well, the links, the preview, that's already Apple domain, right? So
yeah,
we're basically halfway there. And actually, if I don't because I'm not. I've only once tried mobile development before, but test flight is already, so it's kind of like in middle ground, because if your app is not yet published officially to the store, it can be already available through the test flight. So some users that want to test it can. So it's kind of like a lightweight distribution, right?
Right. Yeah. You could have up to 100 users on internal test flight. You could also submit a beta where you can actually have, I think, up to 10,000 users. It has to go through like a mini app review. So it isn't, completely seamless, but that's another option you can do for a little larger distribution before you get out there. Yeah, you can see this inside of, if I go to test flight, you'll be able to see like an internal testing group. This is somebody I added to my Xcode account. And then they will get a link or a code they can enter into the test flight app on their phone, and then download the standalone copy.
That's cool. Okay, I know we have tons of questions also. So not sure if you wanted to demo something else. If not, we can jump probably into.
Yeah, we can go to
what
questions.
are
Yeah,
you
the only other thing I could show you is I did the Play Store as well. It's kind of the same thing, but a different interface.
Oh, right.
But
I always
that's all it
forget
is.
about Android. Sorry.
Yeah. I was trying to think of like my other things that I was like important to demonstrate, but I demonstrate all the stuff you had to get ahead of time. You just need a different set of icons, a different set of screenshots from the other platform, and then you have to fill out a bunch of different things. It'll give you in the dashboard before you fill it out. It'll give you a big list of like all the stuff you have to do. You can actually see the list of different things I did, like submitting a content rating questionnaire, privacy policy. So you kind of just have to work through these things. And they're usually, especially if your first app is pretty simple, it's like pretty basic questions. A lot of times they'll be like, no, it's not a COVID tracking app or something like that. Or, it's not a news app or something. So that's all pretty straightforward.
Nice. That's, yeah. I'm so making the mobile apps now. That's cool. Oh, one thing that I think we slided through it like very quickly when you mentioned like Expo in general, but I think it's like super cool over-air updates. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What's that all about?
Yeah. So once my app is in the store, I would have to do this part first. I have to configure EAS update, but EAS update is a service that it exploits the fact that your app is half native and half JavaScript. And JavaScript is interpreted code, and actually it's written into App Store policies that you are allowed for certain purposes to update interpreted code inside of your app. A lot of the biggest apps in the world use this all the time for dynamically updating content and stuff like that. So EAS update is like a way you can plug into that capability or that that option, and if you run EAS update init, update configure, I'm sorry, if you're assuming you're already set up for an EAS update app, this will install the Expo updates package, which kind of interfaces with this, and it'll set up a few different fields. And then going forward, after you build your app the next time, you can actually run EAS update, and that's the wrong one. EAS update -- channel production. I haven't configured EAS update on this one, so it probably won't be a great example, but you could run this command and it will build just your JavaScript, upload it to the cloud. The build takes, maybe just a minute or two, especially if it's cached in a computer. And then your app, folks who have downloaded it, the next time they open their app, it will download the JavaScript and replace the JavaScript that was already inside the app with the new JavaScript. So while you can't update everything, like you can't add if you weren't using the camera before, you can't suddenly use the camera because you didn't include the camera library, but you can update, your do bug fixes and things like that, things that are, modest, modifications to the JavaScript. You can, so you don't have to go through store review and all that.
Exactly, because normally it would take at least a couple of days, right, to get a new app version through the review or something.
So the first app is going to take you a few days. A lot of them go a lot quicker once you get through the first time, but uploading code to a server is always going to be a lot faster than submitting it to a review team. They do basically all go through some kind of manual review, even if it's pretty quick.
So if you find that, for example, I don't know, you're or maybe you were using a Supabase and you decided to switch to maybe a different event database, you could probably push that over instantly using the over updates, right?
If it's just JavaScript, I mean, in that particular example, we'll want to kind of have a transition plan because people will get the update gradually. Now we have we have an API where you can tell your app to check for updates every time in foregrounds, for instance. So, and then prompt the user to reload the app. So you can optimize it for them to get the update quickly. But to some extent, you'll always have and it's true even for the binary apps, the apps deployed in the App Store, that you'll have to have some transition there so people can run both the old and the new for a while. But you can do stuff like that. If it's just JavaScript, you can change, innards like that.
That's fine. Awesome. All right. Okay, let's jump into questions. Kate, can you?
Yes. Yes. Okay. I think Keith, we don't want you to get kicked out of that room again. Okay. So let's see. We have. Okay. You mentioned the camera, and I saw a couple questions about the camera. Keith, can you just kind of go over? This says, any suggestions on including camera and barcode scanner?
I'm trying to think of what wouldn't be working. I'd be curious what kind of issues you have, but it's usually pretty straightforward. I think maybe the biggest thing people get tripped up on is permissions. So you will have to use these permission hooks that'll they'll tell you that you have the permission to use the camera, and then if you don't, you can then use that information to prompt to let the user allow the app to have access to the camera. Barcode scanner is built into Expo Camera now. It used to be, it was kind of always built in, but there used to be a separate barcode scanner library, but now it's just a single property, barcode scanner enabled. And then there's a function that will get called every time it finds a barcode that's in the list of recognized codes, whether it's 3 of 9 or EAN or QR or whatever. So the trouble, I'm thinking permissions, sometimes folks have had a trouble with a particular type of barcode. There was one, it was someone had an issue with a Costa Rican driver's license or something like that one time I ran into, where it was a 3 of 9 barcode, but it didn't scan. But actually under the hood, we used the same Xing, it's Xing or something like that library that I think virtually all open source barcode scanners use. So if Expo Camera can't scan it, it probably is pretty hard to scan.
Yeah, totally. Okay. We've gotten this question a few times as well. Maybe Tomac, you can take this one. Is it possible to take an existing web app built with Bolt and add mobile functionality using Bolt command and Expo?
So Keith, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I am. That would be cool. But I think it's like it is a separate code base. If you want to, like when you are building a web app up to like a certain point, that was your idea, and you suddenly want to, oh, let's do the Expo app out of it. It wouldn't be possible because the UI is different, right? Like
So
the React version is, or
it
the
wouldn't.
React layer is different.
Yeah, it wouldn't work out of the box, but
Mhm.
if just because like one of these things is running like a different bundler out of the box, for
Mhm.
instance, like Vite versus Metro, which is the React Native bundler. But you can actually take substantial parts of your web app and bring them back into your Expo app. So say you start a new project and you want to pull like whole React pages in. I should say React pages specifically, because it is a React, it's interpreting React at the end of the day. But you can use file extensions, like you can be like profile.web.tsx and like profile.native.tsx, and those will be compiled on those specific platforms. So you could reference like a purely React HTML library inside the web version. As long as you don't try to compile it in the native side, then it should work. The other option, it's pretty new, but we have this thing called Expo DOM components, and it actually lets you take like wholesale web components that didn't work well or didn't work at all or were hard to do on mobile previously, and wrap them in this this thing that basically like inlines them into your React Native screens. So what's pretty common for folks to do there is things like drawing interfaces, rich text interfaces, because there's a lot of well-developed rich text text boxes on web, mapping interfaces, so you can plug web code inside the screen of your React Native app and have it kind of be a seamless part of the app as well.
Got it. My approach was like, without knowing the technology and the possibilities that you've mentioned, I would have probably approached it the way that like the current project Bolt already knows pretty much all about it. So just ask it to create a specification documentation for this project and use that in the new Expo project as a starting point. So
yeah, especially if you did start from Bolt. Yeah, you might as well start with the same prompt, but then change it, make a mobile app that ...
Yeah, if you're not like 50 prompts in, that would be probably easier, because it's also like usually it's like a bit different, more specific screens or behaviors might differ, right? So yeah. But on that we also had a question about the Supabase. Is it possible? So how can I connect my Bolt apps to the same Supabase? So if you're using the native Supabase support that Bolt now has, it is not possible yet, but it will be like this is the next thing we're releasing. And if you know anything about our release schedule, it's pretty fast. So
oh, cool.
this is coming next. And this so that's like this is my number one use case, having a mobile and desktop and web app that connects to the same Supabase. So definitely.
And like technically speaking, like Supabase is perfectly happy to connect to either one. And I think it even generally basically uses the same library. I don't think they have a do they have a React Native specific library for Supabase, or is it all just a JavaScript?
No, I'm pretty sure it's JavaScript, so it's basically
okay. Yeah. So really, it's it's not like a fundamental like rewrite engineering effort. Probably it's just getting a few of the little things in the right places. Probably especially when you think of things like sync. Sync works a little bit differently between the two, I guess. But yeah, they are a lot of apps. A lot of frameworks. I mean, I think of like Firebase, for instance. It has a native version and a JavaScript version, and a lot of apps connect to all three, and it works pretty well.
Keeping us honest.
Friday releases are awesome, but I don't know about that. We'll see. I can't promise anything. Okay, Keith, I know you probably running.
I'm actually just you can keep me on. I'm just gonna move out in case I don't block anybody else, because I really screwed that up and I feel terrible. I need to find that person. Apologize profusely. When there was someone waiting. I'll get my stuff out later.
We did get a couple requests about a checklist to, you know, kind of go through. Great ideas. I think that is something that we talked about with the Expo team. I also saw a question that is Expo and Bolt the same company? We actually are two different companies, but we've been working together on this integration, marketing efforts, that sort of thing. So we're still working closely with them. This is something that we'll definitely look to have out in the future. I think it'd be super helpful. Yeah, there's a lot of steps here, so we'll definitely get something written down for the future.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of made one up really quickly, but I got through some of the items, but I was like, oh man, I keep thinking of more, and so I really should like take a moment. Collaborate there.
Totally. Okay, let's see. Oh, testing app recommendations.
Yeah, we have a Maestro integration. So Maestro, I think I'm a little out of date on my web testing technology, but I often think it's like kind of like a Cypress, but for mobile, for React Native mobile. Like, you know, just one of those frameworks that's really purpose built for testing React Native. You know, comparing to some other test frameworks that were like had React Native and native implementations and are a little bit harder to set up. Maestro, yeah, look in our docs for Maestro, and it's very lightweight. I mean, of course, you can do unit tests in Jest, but I feel like having just like one good end-to-end test is like the first thing I would do when building an app at scale, just something that runs through my screens, and then start building out end-to-end tests from there. And yeah, stay tuned. We're gonna be offering some more options to make it like you can already do a custom job on EAS that runs Maestro. And even like besides testing, take screenshots for you so you could actually see what the output is on different simulators and emulators. But stay tuned. We're going to work on making that even faster, so you don't necessarily have to like rebuild your app all the time when you want to test new functionality, considering that a lot of the functionality that you're probably testing is JavaScript-based functionality.
Yeah. Not the Maestro, not the end-to-end tests. That would have to run locally, right? Especially with EAS.
Yeah, it'll actually involve like building the app at that point. Not to mention running a simulator on other hardware. Like it's actually like it's working because it's running on a Mac in the cloud, and then opening up a simulator and all those kind of things.
I saw a couple of questions asking Keith like the commands that you ran, and I know some people had. I know some of the what is the word? The quality was a little bit fuzzy for some folks on some of that stuff. I'm going to follow up, and I'll put these in the description, all the commands that Keith ran. Yes, and I apologize, we couldn't switch to higher quality midstream, but we will look into this for next time. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Can you transfer code from Claude to Bolt?
I'm not using Claude that much, honestly.
Me neither, actually.
You can definitely, if you can get, in general, if you can get code out of Claude, you can get it into Bolt. And if you tune into, I don't want to show it now because it's like a 5 minutes, like it's short process, but it's still 5 minutes. But I just demoed it on our yesterday stream here on StackBlitz YouTube channel. So if you look into there, you should be able to find it in around the middle. Sorry for not being more specific, but long story short, you can open StackBlitz and then drag all the files into StackBlitz project, and then you have this big button to open a project in Bolt. Yeah, but it is possible.
Amazing. Okay, awesome. Well, I think thanks for everyone for joining. We'll wrap up here. Like I said, we'll include the commands and any links in the description in the YouTube video that will be on StackBlitz's YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us, and
yeah,
we will see you next time. Thanks so much, Keith. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.